Hey, in this video, guys, we're going to talk about why now is the perfect time for you to start your business as a solo founder and without actually borrowing devilish VC funding or taking out a business loan in your name, which is dangerous and scary in the wrong way. Let's dive in. This article on X is really fascinating because this is from Kartra, really awesome data place, and it's showing, look at this, back in 2015, 22% of companies are startups with no funding and they have one founder. And then today, right, last year, 38%. That is a massive spike compared to the year before, where it's 32%. Huge spike. All right. So this whole notion of a single founder, non-VC backed idea is getting far more popular, and people are realizing you can go do that. And one of the reasons is because of all the tools that you have now at your disposal. When I went to business school, the only way they taught us to start a business is the first thing you have to do is actually write a business plan. And it's very funny. I look back on it now. I've been an entrepreneur for 11 years, and everything I learned in school is not at all what you actually do when you're a solo founder. In school, they have you create a business plan, right? And you sit down, you're doing market research, you do a little bit of work on the idea itself, but you're mostly coming up with a proposal to sit in front of a board of investors or go shop around and actually hire, raise money. And it works. It does work. I'm not here to say that it doesn't. It absolutely works, but it is kind of also the business model of yesteryear because you don't have to do that stuff anymore. I don't. I'm very against it, actually. I've found more and more that any kind of company that has VC funding, any kind of other people have come in and put money into it, they tend to act a little bit differently because they really have two customers. This is one of the biggest problems with getting VC funding. Your first customer is the customer. It's the market you're trying to go sell to. But the second customer is whoever gave you all that money, right? They're looking for a return as fast as humanly possible. And so I found that it splits the focus of the business owner. They have two customers to fulfill on now. And just like you can't climb two mountains at once, it is near impossible, or at least burns you out like you would not believe when you go down that route. And more and more people are seeing that and realizing that. For that reason, it's one of the biggest things and reasons I like to avoid any kind of VC funding. And I've built all my businesses without any kind of VC funding, self-bootstrapped it from the ground up. I also don't like it, though, because of what the traditional payout model looks like when you go get VC funding. If you're unfamiliar with the way that the VC funding world works, they have something called the J curve. Okay, so if you're unfamiliar with what the J curve is, this is what it looks like. All right, imagine a graph, and the day that you go and borrow money or get an investor from the outside, I mean, it looks cool and it looks exciting, and I love shows like Shark Tank, and it's really exciting, but I'm also super against what they teach. All right, so the day that you actually borrow cash is the beginning of the J. All right, so I go down in the J curve. I'm not making any money. In fact, I'm losing money. And as I'm finding out what I am as a business, and I'm finding out how to build the business, and if I'm serving the customer correctly, you're not making any money, right? You're in the hole, right? And you owe that money back. And then slowly over time, you start to go and now you're starting to make money, but you're still in debt. And there comes a time, right? So that's the J right there. There comes a time right here where you have finally paid off the money and you're headed towards profitability. Right. And they teach you in business school that traditionally is at the 2 to 5 year mark. 2 to 5 years in, you're finally going to be profitable. I got to tell you right now, if my business is not profitable in 2 to 5 months, something's wrong. It's a different world that you don't need to do that stuff anymore. And then what you do, and this is traditional VC-backed companies that are from the, starter up, then you don't actually just ride all this profitability. There's another round of funding that you go through. So you go through the J again. And so one of the things I used to teach a long time ago was kill the J curve. Get rid of the J curve. You don't need the J curve anymore. Because of the way companies can grow now, you don't have to have the VC funding. And there are scenarios where VC funding makes sense, right? If you're going to go build a factory, you're probably going to get a loan, right? Certain manufacturers, there's certain industries that, yes, absolutely going and getting a business loan. But this influencer internet market that we're in now, you don't really have to have that stuff. If you have any kind of expertise, you're trying to go teach on the internet, or, even people who have like little knickknacks. I'm not saying you don't have to put any money in, but going and getting out of this massive business loan, it's becoming less and less of a thing. When I go out and I learn how to build a funnel and I learn how to actually serve the customer first, my profitability might be kind of low at the beginning, but can go really, really quickly, just like this. This is way better. All right. When you're going in and you are doing something like VC firms, VC funding, you're getting that, investments or kind of a loan. It's really funny because the reason you take on the money is to, number one, you go build the business. You're hiring people, you're figuring out your different processes, you're building the business side of the business. And then number two, you are focused on the product. Now, obviously I know people are probably going to fight with me on that, but that's kind of what you're doing because you have two different customers. You've borrowed this money and you're hiring people. You're not even cash flow positive yet. You're working on processes before you even really have the product figured out yet, right? And it's one of the biggest reasons why VC funding is so not interesting for someone like me. Because what we do is we go in and we say, hey, I'm actually first going to focus on the product. I'm going to make the product absolutely amazing. And when I have some sales coming on in, I'll use that money to go build the business, hire the right people. And in that way, I own the entire business. I don't have any golden handcuffs with someone else trying to breathe down my neck and say, make these decisions, right? Nobody else is on the decision-making board except for me. And it's amazing. It's such an easier way to go grow. Now, there's benefits to both sides, though. One of the reasons why it's nice to get something like VC funding is that you do get a board of investors, typically. You get a board who's there to advise you and literally shortcut the time that it takes for you to make key decisions. That's amazing. Everyone needs to be able to bounce ideas off of someone who's been there, done that. That's wonderful. And that's one of the reasons why people in our world will join things like masterminds or just be around others who've been further down the road that they're on. So you can still have that same effect and not miss out on VC funding. So I used to work for this guy, really, really big guy. I worked for him for quite a while. Years later, when I left working for him, he and I were hanging out in his backyard. And he's sitting there and he's looking at me. And I was like, what? And he's like, dude, you did in 3 years what took me 10 years to do. I was like, what do you mean? He goes, I'm just looking at it. It's like, it's crazy. And I said, well, let's roll back what that actually means, though. I said, when you started, social media wasn't really a thing. Y'all were posting on forums. Right? There wasn't any of this sales funnel tech. You had to be a coder or hire one. Does that make sense? I was like, think of the floors of people you would have to employ if things like Facebook and social media didn't exist. If things like different funnel building tech didn't exist. Because those tools exist now, it means I can pay a low monthly fee and get this amazing piece of tech. That's one of the reasons why it's exploding so much now. In fact, this happened last month. I was speaking at an event and this dude was sitting next to me and he was like, man, I feel kind of weird because y'all have teams and you're talking about team management, project management. He's like, I literally just use AI now. It does my sales. It finds my leads. He's like, I'm a team of one. And I was like, yep. And that's becoming more and more of the standard. So the only thing that means for you now is for you to make a decision if you're still trying to figure out whether or not going to get VC funding at the beginning of your business. And it also means that you just have a little bit of a learning curve to go through because you're going to start to learn and understand certain key roles so that you know how to use the different tools that are available to you today. So the only thing that's standing in your way is a little bit of education. It's like turning off Netflix and just like rolling up the sleeves and be like, I'm going to go learn this. How do I get leads? And then how do I have a system that does it for me instead of a person? How am I going to get sales? How am I going to have a system and a tool that does it for me instead of a person? That's the only question you have to ask. It's genuine curiosity will literally solve this problem for you. And it's worth a massive amount of money. I'll say the two biggest expenses that I've had over the last 11 years of being an entrepreneur is taxes and team. And it's not just in terms of money, emotions. Right? Managing people, hiring people, firing people, training them. It's the management of the thing. But when you have a tool and a system that's doing that, it just obeys you. It doesn't ask for a vacation or anything like that. So it's one of the coolest things that's starting to come out right now, even harder. Yeah, almost 40% of people are now realizing I could just go start a business right now and I don't need to have anyone else on there except for me. Now, this does mean with every positive, there can be potential negative. One of the potential negatives of this is that because you're solo flying, and get a little lonely. You also, because you're probably a futurist and you're an entrepreneur and you're thinking in the future and trying to make something real that isn't yet, sometimes people aren't going to know what you're talking about, right? So I found that the way to get around that is literally by actively finding ways to network, be involved in other communities. They don't have to work for me, but just to be around other people really means a lot. And I used to laugh at this. I used to be like, I don't need human connection. Just put me in my desk, man. I'm going to stay in my creative cave and I'm just going to stay. That's not true. It's just not sustainable. I actually think it's one of the beauties of it is you get to choose your surroundings and your people even more by being a solo founder. You don't have to run ideas past everyone. But again, there's positives and negatives to that. You still have to have that from somewhere. Now, here is where VC funding is amazing. This is the second massive opportunity that's happening for those of you guys who are solo founding without any kind of backing or financial backing at all. I'm really against, like I've shown here, I'm really against the J curve at the beginning. Super, super against it because I want to own all the equity and I want to make the decisions and I want to run as fast as I possibly can without spot checking every decision with a board. Again, pros and cons. But where VC funding is getting very interesting is more and more of my friends who are solo founding or at least have a very small team and have a lot of systems figured out. That's extremely attractive for VC firms in like the traditional round 2 phase. So right here, I'm having a lot of friends who are only running their company for 2 to 3 years with the sole intent of selling their company to a VC firm. So you don't get the VC funding at the beginning, but you still turn around and look at it later on down the road when you're like, yeah, I got this as a well-oiled machine. Who wants to come buy it from me for, lots of multiples? That's when to start to look at it. So I'm not throwing funding out completely. I'm just saying hold off on it and go figure out who you sell, what you sell, how it sells, which is the 3 hardest questions to solve. Figure out all the systems and processes that can run without you. And then what I really encourage people to go do, in fact, we do this in my mastermind called Titans of Industry. We have them do what's called a 2-week vacation test. Sometimes as an owner, we get so into our businesses and we're so sucked into them that we're blind to what processes are actually needing our attention the most. We're too in the business, not on the business. And it's one of the things that you have to be very careful of when you're a solo founder, working the business versus working on the business. And so I would encourage, even if you do it for like 2 or 3 days, once you get your revenue to a certain spot, and once things are kind of running a little bit, literally leave the business for like 3 days, a week even, I would challenge you. And your job is to be completely unplugged. You don't want to check in on the business every day. Do not bring your laptop for the sake of doing work on the vacation. Literally take a vacation, walk away. And what you're going to do is you're going to come back and you're going to see all of these things that have problems. The most important problems to solve for you next will rise to the top, and then just solve those and do it again. There's a whole book that talks about this called the 2-week vacation test, that it's one of the best ways for you to actually start identifying the most important problems. The business is always going to have problems. Your business will never be a perfect thing. And so what you have to learn how to do, especially if you're solo founding, is you have to get really good at identifying problems, but then ranking them and realizing that not everything is worth solving and not everything is worth your attention and not everything should honestly necessary to solve in the first place, especially if your goal is to go turn around and go flip it and sell it. It just has to get a customer. It's got to give what they bought, and it's got to be able to grow largely on its own. So that's one of my favorite ways to go do that. And there's several places that I've found this very, very valuable. I had practiced being a CEO of a 15-person company when I was in college, and I started noticing that too many of the decisions were coming back to me. And so to do this very concept, what I did to start smoking out what problems we were having and to stress test my systems, I began disappearing on purpose from the company during our busiest hours. It was a physical brick and mortar. There was one time, and this might sound mean, but it's what you got to do as a business owner. Otherwise, you're the business, right? Don't be the business. You got to build a business, right? And a business is nothing more than a series of systems that creates a customer. It's all business is. And to quote the famous quote, nothing happens until something is sold. Go sell. So what I started doing, I remember one day I literally, in that 15-person business, they voted me as the CEO, which I was like dreading. I remember one day literally hiding behind a bush. And I hid behind this bush, and I'm looking around the side of this bush and watching the people in my company sprint around to try to find me so they could be like, we have this issue. What should we do? And it was the coolest thing. I still remember his face to this day. He comes running out of our store looking for me, and I'm hiding behind a freaking bush. And he's like, looking around, sit there for a second, and then just runs back in and solves the problem. And I was like, yes, victory! I am no longer the system. The system is the system. And so that's the mentality you have to have. So as beautiful as all these solo founder things are, the simple trap, very slippery slope that happens is that you accidentally become the business. Don't be the business. You're building a business, right? You're not the machine. Build a machine, and the machine needs to have 4 components, which I know I continue to pound on this channel, but you have to have a system that gets leads largely without your involvement. You gotta have a system that can sell largely without your involvement. You must be able to deliver largely without your involvement, and you have to be able to resell or upsell largely without your involvement. Now, you're involved in each of those at the beginning because you're building it. You're testing it. As I am tweaking and getting clear on my systems for leads, I suddenly get to a spot where I'm like, I think it's running on its own. Okay, let me put my hands back slowly. I'm going to slowly lean back from this thing. Can it run without me? Can it run without me? Oh my gosh, it is. All right, I'm going to keep a close eye on that. I'm not going to go take my 2-week vacation yet. I'm going to go in and I'm going to do my sales system now. And following that pattern is how you get really good at building a machine that, again, takes an operator, and you're never not going to be the operator until you sell it as a solo founder. But that's the slippery slope to watch out for. So there have never been as many tools for business than right now. Last year, a buddy of mine was like, Steven, it's never been harder to be successful in business than today. And I looked at him kind of jaw dropped. And I sat back, I was like, it's never been easier than right now. Imagine these marketers back in the 1800s who didn't have all the distribution channels we use today. They didn't have social media. They didn't have tech. There wasn't computers that you could automate stuff. And they were millionaires back then. We have all these tools. And I told him, I was like, no offense, man, but like, if you can't figure it out today, the chance that you will ever is really low. It's never been easier. You've never had more cards in your favor than right now, including all this AI. I know there's like doom and gloom that people say with it, but there's also all these amazing, beautiful automations and benefits. Now is the time to own the fact I am a solo founder. That doesn't mean you're never going to hire someone else. Like an assistant is great, but even then, I know people who just use AI for that now even. And just recognize the the fact that you're not just in the business of building a product. That's one hat. The second hat that if you're going to be a solo founder, don't stay in the mentality of an entrepreneur. The entrepreneur is the product building hat. And I built tons of products that didn't go anywhere because I didn't wear the second hat. The second hat is the marketer. And the third, I'd say, is the business owner. So what's the product? How does it sell? And then you're in the business of systems. To say it another way, an entrepreneur is in the business of finding and solving a problem. A marketer is in the business of attention getting measured in lead gen. We don't measure marketing in likes, comments, subscribe, shares, any of that. That's not marketing. So if you're putting videos out, not getting any leads, you put content out, you didn't put marketing out. It's a hard pill for some people to swallow, but it's true. What is a business owner in the business of? Systems. And until you have systems, you're the system. Until you have systems, you're not a business owner, it owns you. And so this is the key piece to understand with this. This is such an amazing opportunity for people. I hope that this has helped create more of a lens of what your job actually is. You still have a job when you're a business owner until you own the business and it pretty much runs without you. Now you're a business owner. You own an asset, an actual thing that can come and actually bring you cash, and it's a cash flowing machine, which then at that point, if you choose to go sell out, that's an amazing opportunity to go do that because those companies are really looking for companies like ours. They love the solo founder startup that's bootstrapped and you own all the equity. Like I got so many friends selling their companies for ridiculous multiples right now because they followed this path. This graph is showing how cool it is that all these founders are happening. All these solo founders, non-VC backed founders, that's incredible. But what it's not showing is the incredible opportunity that we all have if you're used to being a solo founder and being able to go sell out, and what happens in the VC world because you didn't start with VC funding. You're actually more valuable on the buyout. And that's not true for every industry, but for a firm that's like, oh my gosh, look at this person who owns their entire company. That just makes the deal easier. That makes it so much easier. Anyway, I hope this is helpful to you guys. If you have any questions on this, let me know. In fact, I'd love to know if you have VC funding. I'm not going to slam you. That's amazing. That's super cool. You did something that shows like Shark Tank celebrate, and something like college for me celebrated. And that was our practicum. We had to write a 20-page business plan and try to get funding. And some kids got funded. I'm so glad I didn't. So that's great if you got VC funding. But if you didn't and you're a solo founder, also let me know down below. That's a celebration as well. But don't get so involved in the business that you forget that you should be working on building a business. And the business of a product is very different than the business itself. And they're two different things to go solve. Guys, if you like this, like, comment, subscribe. If you didn't like it, let me know as well. And let me know what other questions you have going on inside your business right now, because I literally look at your comments and we figure out what we can do. This is your channel as much as it is mine. Would love to be able to share my insights from 11 years of doing this. So let me know down below what I can help with, and I'll see you guys in the next one.